So the question we had presented to us today, I think, is a really good one, and one that a lot of people might have out there that are at least into fitness, and that is, why do I need carbs to build muscle? All right, what have we said here at One Wellness before we say anything? You don't need really anything, right? Except for food, air, water, sleep eventually, right? Things like that. Obviously, if you can say what you need. And we've talked about this with many things, ranging from medicine, chiropractic, all sorts of things, right? But if you want certain things, you do need to do certain things, take certain measures to make that happen, right? Of course. So this situation is actually no different. Is carbohydrate food, right? Well, yeah, we said you need food, but you can have many different types of food to give you energy in order to have better workouts or to prevent you from breaking down amino acids. So let's talk about primarily what is the reason that they say you want to have all these carbs to build muscle, right? Well, it's really so that you have ample amounts of energy during your workout, not just to have a better workout, to support muscle growth and gaining lean muscle mass by just, again, having better workouts, performing better, right? Obviously, you're going to have better body composition and whatnot if you're having better workouts, typically, right? But also because what happens when you run out of energy, glucose as a source or sugar, right, in your body, and then you go to break something else down during high intensity exercise? Well, during high intensity exercise, you're not getting ample amounts of oxygen, right? And you're doing, say, HIIT or sprinting or something of that nature, typically in the presence of oxygen, if I'm just here as I am right now, relaxed and living, I would go from carbs, glucose, right, sugar, to fat, and then to protein in the order of what my body would break down in order, right? I wouldn't want to break protein down first or even second, because those are the building blocks in the body, right? Enzymes that are responsible for promoting a lot of functions in the body, right? From, proper brain function and muscle movement and all sorts of things, right? And cellular health. So we wouldn't want to do that. They're components of tendons and ligaments, and bone are these proteins, and muscle, of course. So we want to go there last. But what happens is there is a caveat with this, and that's if you don't have ample amounts of oxygen. So getting back to that sprinting or that HIIT exercise, you're going to go from glucose right to amino acids or the building blocks of proteins. So you'll go from that sugar or the carbs right to protein, and you start breaking down your muscle. Well, why does this happen? Well, this happens because it takes oxygen to break down fat, right? So this is aerobic metabolism. It requires oxygen in the mitochondria to, go through this whole pathway of, beta oxidation, breaking down fat for energy, right? And so we don't want to go from sugar right to protein. So then, okay, Shane, so you're telling me I should have a lot of sugar in my muscles so that I don't break down protein. You could. There could be one way. But you also could get energy from different things that your body will utilize, before it's going to go and break down muscle. But also, the second important thing I want to talk about here in terms of muscle growth, right, is how do muscles grow, right? Well, they respond to some mechanical stress, and that mechanical stress could come in the form of weightlifting, or like we even said, really deep stretching, right? Stretching to the point beyond comfort, and we talked all about that. You're better off with strength training for the amount of time it takes you and the effectiveness in short, right? If you don't want to go catch that When Wellness video, then stretching, right? But, if you are looking to build more muscle, then understand that when you respond to that mechanical stress, what's happening in the muscles is they need to divide. These muscle cells need to grow, right? They need, you don't have the muscle yet, right? So if it's going to grow, it needs to make new cells, right? New muscle cells naturally, okay? So these muscle cells tear, they respond to stress. These fibers repair, you have more cells. Within these fibers, they're all made up of little cells, right? And these are called satellite cells. So satellite cells become, and a muscle cell is just a myocyte, right? But when you talk about ones, and the names of this stuff doesn't matter. I'm just telling you guys so you understand the process, right? And that's what's important and why you should do what we're going to tell you at the end, right? So, these satellite cells, these are stem cells that you find in muscle tissue, right? And typically they divide asymmetrically so that it'll make a muscle cell and it'll make another stem cell, right? So that can again do it and that can again do it and so on, right? And that happens under, states of normal stress from like a workout or this and that. But under states of extreme stress, these satellite cells, they'll just produce a lot more stem cells, right? A lot more stem cells. And so you're building muscle. These cells, they proliferate, and then they differentiate. They proliferate, there's more of them, right? And then they differentiate from an immature to a more mature muscle cell. In simple, it's kind of how that works, right? So this process in itself requires energy. Those cells, they don't just magically do that, right? It requires energy for them to do so. And so it does take energy for the process of growth of the muscle down to the cellular level. Right? And so this energy, though, it doesn't have to come from carbohydrates. That energy could come from the phosphagen pathway, right? And what is that? Well, it's the pathway that creatine is involved in, and it's where creatine monophosphate, creatine, the amino acid, which you find high amounts of meat and fish, right? Body synthesizes some creatine in the liver, stores majority in skeletal muscle, right? Also another reason, brain, testes, whatever, right? But creatine, monohydrate, mono is monohydrate, or it's commonly called, but monophosphate, one phosphate group, right? And it takes that phosphate, right? And creatine phosphatase comes over and it says, all right, we're gonna take that phosphate group off the creatine, we're gonna donate it to ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And again, these names don't matter. I want you to understand how many different pathways, how many ways you can make energy for this process of muscle growth to happen, right? And this is one of them, the phosphagen pathway that involves creatine. And so it donates that phosphate to ADP, makes ATP, right? Because diphosphate, di is 2, triphosphate is 3 phosphates, right? So it gives that phosphate, and now you have 3 phosphates with the adenosine, right? And so that's energy, right? ATP is energy, the major stored form of energy in the human body, okay? So then you'll have a creatine kinase that rephosphorylates or adds a phosphate back onto creatine, and it can do it all over again, right? So if you have ample stores of creatine, do you guys think you would need as many carbs to get that same energy to go through something like muscle growth? Well, no, right? And in fact, when we're talking about the order of what's broken down, remember we said it's normally carbs, fat, protein in the presence of oxygen. Absence of oxygen, carbs, protein, right? Right away, amino acids. Well, we don't want to get there. It's breaking down muscle. So what's even before carbs is creatine, phosphagen pathway. So we'll go there even first. So even if you don't have a lot of sugar stores, now sugar stores, they can be a great thing. Do I eat carbs? Of course I eat carbs, but I don't eat simple carbs, simple BS carbs. I have them with fiber, right? Complex carbohydrates, rich and soluble fiber, so that I can feed my gut bacteria and also replenish these glycogen stores at the same time. But I'm not as much doing it for the muscle growth. I'm really more into that for the fiber, right? I want to feed my gut bacteria and improve digestion, improve my gut health, right? That's extremely important for everything in the body, right? From immune function to mood and rates of muscle protein synthesis or building protein in the muscle or muscle growth, right? And so, do you need carbs to build muscle, and why or why not? Well, the short answer is really no, right? Some carbs are a good thing if you're an endurance trainer, if you're somebody who's running marathons. Sure, you could take the creatine and also have a lot of glycogen stores or stored form of carbs, right? Of glucose or sugar in your muscles. So that this way you get through the creatine, and then you can also go through the glycogen, and then you can, hopefully never get to breaking down the amino acids, right? Now, the other thing is when you eat, say fat, because you have these animals, they survive off of meat, right? They survive off of meat, and there's no carbs in that. It's all fat and protein, right? And so how do they get jacked if that's just what they're eating, right? And we talked about a carnivore diet alone is probably not the way to go. You don't need to abide to any, societal correct diet, right? Just have an all-encompassing lifestyle and nutritional, diet, if you will. That supports optimal health, right? And your goals. And so if these animals, despite that fact, right, of the carnivore diet, how we talked about it, say they are, how are they getting stores of sugar into their muscles, right? If they do want to not break down, they're getting creatine from the meat too, right? But if they do want to not break down sugar, if they do not want to break down amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, right after they got through that sugar or through the creatine they had through the meat, right? Well, the thing is, you don't just have to eat the sugar You have to remember what you eat manipulates your body to produce certain things, right? And so you can make sugar. When your body breaks down certain sources of energy, it then takes, this is very important to understand. You don't need to know the names of any of this stuff. It then takes portions of what it broke down, goes through the liver, and says, let's make a new source of energy from that basic component, that constituent of what we previously broke down. And you even find that example in amino acids, right? And so it breaks down the amino acid, and then it takes something from it that can be converted into something else that it can now use to produce, say, sugar. Or when you break down fat, like we're talking about with these animal diet lovers, right? These carnivore, crazy animals, right? Well, not crazy at all, right? They're able to produce sugar, right? They're able to produce sugar from some of the components that are byproducts of what they had broken down. In this case, it seems to be the fat, right? And so it's not so simple as what you're taking in. You're going to try to get into those muscles, and that's what you're going to be using, that you need carbohydrates. Now, is there an essential carbohydrate? Anyone out there? What's the essential carbohydrate? Right, you can't think of one, right? Yeah, because you hear of essential amino acids, you hear of essential fatty acids, you hear of essential carbohydrate. No, right? So it's not totally essential, but never disregard fiber. And this is just on the topic of good health in general, right? But if your question is, do I need those carbs to build muscle? Well, the short answer really is no. I mean, some of them might be beneficial, but you definitely would want to make sure you're having ample amounts of another energy source to have better workouts, to make sure you don't break muscle down right after you do get through whatever that initial energy source is. You have enough of that energy source, whether it's the creatine or you've eaten a lot of healthy fats or fats in general, meat, whatever, or it is glucose in the form of sugar, right? You want to make sure you have enough of it. You're not going to get down to breaking down that muscle. And you also have to recognize the fact that aside from the risk of breaking down muscle during the workout, it requires energy, ATP, in order to build muscle in itself after the workout, for these muscle cells to regenerate. It's an energy expensive process, you guys. So that's what we got. I hope that was a good answer to your question. You know who you are out there, and have a great day, man. Who's on here? Say what's up to the peeps. We're gonna go train someone great. Luck, James, Moonbo, Chris, Richard Wharton, Wave, Kendrick, Joy, Bull City, Guillermo, Thornton, Ivan, what's up, brother? Ma, I love you. You're great. This one's for you. John V. Bonbon. Also for Alicia Stevenson, because it's her birthday. How you doing, girl? Dave, he's the beast in the East. Killer Chinchilla, what's up? Man, Katie, Romelgio, and the Troll King. Well, guys, before we leave, we're going to say, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alicia Stevenson. Whenever I think of you, I think of those great times going out of the bar. When you got really drunk, you were in my bed, and a girl came home. It was this crazy thing. Said it really fast so people don't understand what I'm saying, but you do. Happy birthday to you, and many more. Happy birthday. I think we're out in Pittsburgh is the time I'm talking about. You told me it was like the biggest bar strip in the country. Right? It was a good time. Yeah, I don't go to the bar a lot anymore. I like having smoothies with frozen spinach and blueberries. Now what happened to me? I feel great. That's what happened. I love you. I hope you had a great day. Yeah, happy birthday. As for now, so what we got for you folks. We'll see you tomorrow, baby. Not sure when, not sure what, but we'll see you then. Have a great one. Thank you. Happy Wellness. See ya.